Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TryThisat.Work live event focused on all the new Teams meeting features. My name is Kelly Cleland. I am a Customer Success Manager here at Microsoft and a TryThisat.Work leader, and I am joined by my fellow co-lead, Scott Rundell, who's a Partner Technical Architect here at Microsoft, and he's actually going to be the one that's presenting all of these amazing features today. Before we get started, just some quick housekeeping items. This is an anonymous event. We in no way, shape, or form collect any of your information. Your privacy is of the utmost importance to us, even if you may have authenticated through Office 365. And if we do happen to have your email address on the back end, just know we will not be using it in any way, shape, or form. There's no follow-up attached to these events. As always, please feel free to submit your questions throughout the event. We have a lot to get through, so some of the questions I may just respond to directly if I know the answer. Again, some of these items we're going to be covering are things that haven't rolled out yet, so we might not know all of the answers, so just something to keep in mind. But with that, I know Scott has amazing things to talk to you about today in terms of really what's just released and what's upcoming. So I'm going to hand it right over to you, Scott, so you can get started and we can stay on time.
Hey, Kelly, thanks a lot. Hey there, TryThisat.Workians, or would it be TryThisat.Workanites? Maybe we should just call them minions. I don't know. We'll play with that one. Anyway, welcome to our new Teams features, the May 2021 edition. A lot of obscure features in this session today, stuff I would have never even thought of. It's kind of weird, but so it's good that we're presenting this to you because there's somebody out there that goes, I've been waiting for that. So with that, let's jump right in.
Oh, Scott, I think you accidentally muted yourself.
I did. That's terrible. All right.
It happens.
Oh my goodness. All right. So first up today, we have this thing called Go Local support for live events. In a nutshell, this now means that live events that you create going forward, any data and that recording and all that will now be in your local data center, your local geo data center versus maybe the US data center or wherever your tenant was hosted from. So for those of you that are concerned about where that data is located now, Go Locals rolled out, and that data will now stay in your regional data center. So we're really excited about that. All right. So Windows 10 native notifications. So within your notification settings, as the slide builds out, you can change the way you're notified from the Teams built-in, which is your little toasts, to a Windows-based. And here they're just showing you kind of how that builds, and then that's kind of the differences between the way the two look. The top one is the Windows 10. It's telling you that this pop-out is coming from Microsoft Teams versus just the bottom one, which says this your standard Teams one that says somebody did something. So you can change your notifications now. All right, collaborative calling. You can now have calling into a channel from a call queue. So you can actually direct the call queue to ring the people in a channel based on the call queue settings. So whether that's all ring or serial ring, round robin, what have you. So that's what the collaborative calling is talking about. And then of course you can answer and transfer calls and talk about the call that you're on. If say it's a support call or something like that, you can chat with your peers internally, while answering the call. So very good for your basic contact center or call center scenarios. We do have third-party advanced call center applications that work with Teams, but this allows you to create that more of a basic one. So for things that might not be contact center worthy, so your HR or IT or something like that. So collaborative calling in the channel. So we're excited about that, and that one's also rolled out. All right, guess what? You can now have custom backgrounds on your iPhone in Teams. So you can pick a custom background. Loving that. All right, so this one, related content for Teams meetings on iOS and Android. So in your desktop client, when you click on the invite for a meeting, you see a bunch of content. So in Teams, one of the things we've done, and I think we talked about this in the meetings update we did a few weeks ago, you can add things like PowerPoint presentations, files, notes, applications, like Poly or Forms or anything like that. You can pre-add these things into a meeting. Well, previously, when you looked at these on your mobile, you wouldn't see all that content, and now you can. That's what this is talking about. So there's the after. You see the before and after there. Now you can see the related content as the slide built out. All right, improved experience in the meeting participant roster. So what this is talking about is the fact that you will see the lobby, the presenters, and the attendees, and you can see up to 20 in each of these sections by default. So when you first look at it, you'll see the first 20. You'll then have the option to review the full list. So if you're scrolling through it for some reason, looking for someone, or as the graphic shows, you can see whose hands are raised. That's a nice feature. By the way, if you didn't know this, when you raise your hand in the participant list, you actually go to the top. So that if you're looking for raised hands in a webinar or something like that, those people go to the top. Pretty cool feature. Otherwise, they are in alphabetical order. Within a meeting, you can now search for participants in a roster. So as our events get bigger and bigger, and we're only showing the first 20 people by default, rather than scrolling through and looking for a particular individual, you can now search for them by name. So you would hit the participants tab. There is a search bar there. As the slide builds out, you can see that. You can type the name of someone, and if they're in the meeting, they will show up there. And then you can, of course, either invite them if they're not in the meeting but had accepted, or you could add somebody new, or you can simply just search for them because you might want to start a side chat with them or something of that nature. And you can do like wildcards to make it look like a filter. So anybody's name that starts with S or something like that. All right, improvements for managing attending audio permissions in Teams. That's a fancy way for saying hard mute. Okay, so you can now hard mute in Teams. You see there it says allows attendees to mute or unmute. And that just kind of helps keep the meeting a little more organized for people that might forget to go on mute and come off of mute by accident or what have you. You can now force the mute this is for attendees, by the way, let's be clear. You can only control attendees in this case, not presenters, because presenters obviously are going to be presenting and we want them to be able to mute and unmute themselves. This stops attendees from unmuting. So we call this a hard mute. Now you can go in, and as you can see there in the graphic, it says allow to unmute. So in the case of a question like that, you would take the person with their hand up, hit the ellipsis, allow them to unmute, and then you could speak. You can unmute now, or they also get a banner that says you can now unmute yourself. And your mute button goes from grayed out to white, also as a visual indication showing you that you can now unmute. So if you're savvy about it, you don't have to be told you can unmute. You'll see that ability and then be able to unmute. This one's pretty clever. In the poll within a team, you can now, when you do multiple choice questions, you can set which one is the right answer or which of the answers are correct answers. So single or multiple choice, you'll be able to say that. And then once the poll closes, you'll be able to find out if you were right. So this is a handy little test taking feature that they've added. So real popular in the EDU space, education space, or EDU space as we call it. Customizing apps in Microsoft Teams, real quick, not a lot of information on this one, but once you have an app, so you see this one has the now virtual agent, you can make it customizable by maybe renaming it, so for whitelisting it or whatever. If it's within your organization, you might want to give it a different name because you may have rolled it out as part of a program that has a different name. It's just there. You can do that if you want. You can do things like short name, short description, policy URLs, website URLs, things like that. So it allows you to add those customizations to apps that you put into Teams. So clever. Again, one of the obscure features that just has shown up in Teams. So it seems like the product group is playing catch up on some of these requests as they have come in, and now they're starting to land. We talked about this in our previous session about meetings, with the new PowerPoint Live presentation. So now you can do things like stand out, okay, put yourself in the bottom right-hand corner of the meeting. Of course, be aware that anybody that hasn't had this feature rolled out into their tenant, even if you're presenting it, they won't be able to see it. So you see the guy here in the bottom right, he's pointing to something on his presentation because he has a window that mirrors him, so he could do that. So he can point at what he's trying to look at. But not everybody's necessarily going to see that. So it might look a little foolish if you're not seeing it in this mode and he's pointing at something and you're like, what's he pointing at? But this feature should be rolled out by the end of this month completely to all the tenants. So therefore, when you start doing your live presentations, you've got the different presenter modes and you'll be able to see this. And of course, like we talked about, and simply to reiterate, if you are going to be using this kind of presentation mode, make sure you don't have any content in the lower right-hand corner of your presentation. Otherwise, your graphic, your video graphic will cover it up. Previously in Teams live events like this one, anonymous external participants were not allowed to present. Okay, the only way you could get an external person to present was by making them a guest in a team so that they had an identity in your tenant, and then they had to be using the Windows hard client on your PC in order to do that. Well, we've loosened some of those parameters now. You can have external presenters. They still need to use the desktop client, but they do not need to be added as guests into your teams prior. They can simply use their Office 365 identity to be brought in and present. So we're really happy about that one. That one was one that people have been asking for a while, because we have a lot of these live events, and I'm sure you do as well, where you want to bring an external person in. So very happy to see that. Teams for your personal life banners, still kind of rolling out throughout the rest of this year. It's just banners for your personal features. So once the change is rolled out, your tenants will be able to see the banners affecting the feed, saying that you can add that personal account. I just happened to do this yesterday. I added a personal account to my work Teams. It's a separate email. It's a personal email that you add, and what it does is it actually spins up another Teams desktop client window. And it looks like it, and it's very similar to what's called a Teams Lite. Actually, you know what? I think I can actually show you that. Let me do that real quick just to show you kind of what that looks like. I think I have it open here. Yeah, here it is. So this is my Teams personal. Okay, so I set it up. All right, you can. So there's my email. I don't mind if you see that email, whatever. But the different things I'm logged in. So there's my work account. But this is the Teams personal client. And you notice it's a very stripped down version, activity, chat, and calendar, and that's it. So that's Teams personal. So if you have that ability in Teams to add your personal account and you want to, I would recommend you do that. And then you'll get then you'll have that, what they call that personal banner that'll show up here. There it is right there, personal. All right, so that was a nice live little thing I could share with you today. All right, back to our presentation. All right, the next few slides are going to talk about the breakout room functionalities, some enhancements that have come. Okay, so now where you had to before when Kelly first showed us breakout rooms, you had to assign people and they had to stay in that breakout room. Now you can reassign participants once the rooms are open. Big, huge deal. A lot of people have been asking for it since breakout rooms happened. So this particular feature allows you to reassign participants once the rooms are open. Another breakout room functionality that we have are to set timers for breakout sessions. So you could actually have, say, go away for 5 minutes and then it'll be brought right back. So that's pretty cool. So that way you don't have people hanging out in the breakout rooms when they're supposed to be back in the main session. All right, so this is just talking about the enhanced user experience for participants. So it includes capability of sorting rooms and performing multiple selections of room assignments, things like that. So just, again, one of those obscure things that you wouldn't even know about unless you were playing around with it and went, oh, look, I could do this now. And then the breakout room, pre-meeting room creation. So now you don't have to wait till your meeting starts or start up your meeting and create your rooms. You can actually get them configured and have that participant assignment before the meeting starts, whereas before you had to wait until you were in the meeting and select the breakout room. So very happy about this. Should be fully rolled out by the end of this month. This one's primarily for the education space. It's a supervised chat. So what basically happens here is in a channel, people will not be allowed to chat unless the supervisor or the person who is designated as the supervisor is in the chat. So very like a moderator type thing. So, and what this stops is, and I was actually working with an education customer, and they're like, these kids have been chatting in these rooms without the teacher's presence, and the folks in the education space were not happy about that. So this was a big one. So they're very, very happy to see this now. So in the channel, the students won't be able to chat unless the teacher's present. Present to teams from the PowerPoint web app. This is the web app now. You had already had this ability in the PowerPoint desktop app, but now in the PowerPoint web app, you don't have to go to Teams, select present, select your PowerPoint, 3 or 4 clicks just to get in here. You can actually present to Teams directly, and it will look at your calendar and find the meeting and allow you to start presenting right from there. Join a meeting with a new digital meeting ID. So from Outlook, there's a meeting ID that you could copy and paste, and if you didn't have access to Outlook or whatever, but if you had that meeting ID, you could cut and paste it, or maybe for some reason it didn't show up in your Teams calendar or what have you. There is a small lag between Outlook and Teams. So, if somebody just sent you a meeting invite and said, hey, I need you to jump in right now, if they didn't pull you in, they could give you the ID and you could join that meeting via the ID. So it just provides a different way for people to join a meeting. Not sure if we talked about this in our meetings feature update, but the fact that we now have the ability to do webinars and registrations. Okay, so in your Teams client, if you hit new meeting there, you can schedule a meeting or you can schedule a webinar. And if you schedule a webinar, it pulls up a form where you can now build the email that gets sent out when people register. And you can build that template that you send out for people to register. Okay, so some new registration features within that. The caveat here is you have to have either an E3 or an E5 license, business standard or a premium license in order to be able to use that. Okay. All right, organizers can now lock the meetings. Nobody can join once a meeting is locked. So stragglers, if your content is time sensitive or sensitive to other constraints, and you think that maybe some people were forwarding the meeting that didn't want to be there, you can now lock that meeting. We're real happy about that. There it is, meeting's locked, nobody else can join. Operator Connect, let's talk about this one for a minute. So currently, in order to get the voice aspect of Teams rolling, that PBX functionality, your options are, as of today, the Microsoft calling plans, whereas Microsoft is your phone company and you get numbers from Microsoft and you can do all that stuff from the admin portal, or what's called direct routing. Now, direct routing is where you keep your current carrier or a carrier of your choice, and you use what's called an SBC, a session border controller, to connect your telecom provider to Office 365. So Microsoft is not acting as your phone service provider. We are simply acting as your PBX provider at that point, and your telephony lines, your phone lines are coming in from a carrier that you already have an existing relationship with. Operator Connect takes this a step further. And what it does is we've partnered with those names that you see on there, NTT, BT, Intrado, Rogers, Swisscom, Pure IP, Tata, and the like. And we are creating a connection with them. It's like direct routing, except it's all embedded. And it doesn't work this way today, but what will happen is you will be able to go into Teams and select which operator you want to work with. Now, initially, those are the initial ones, the initial operators that are in the program. More will be onboarded as time goes on. But now you can actually choose, if you didn't want to use Microsoft, or if Microsoft didn't offer phone numbers in that area, you can actually choose your carrier, and then you can get numbers through there. So it just shows you a preview of what the Operator Connect pane is going to look like in the Teams Admin Center. So this is really clever, because now it makes getting those numbers so much easier. So for these smaller companies, that let's just say a customer has Tata Communications as their provider. Right now, the only thing they can do is use what's called direct routing that we just talked about to get those numbers, and it requires a lot of PowerShell and things like that. With Operator Connect, we're going to make it much easier for you as a customer to manage that relationship, in that you'll be able to do it all through the Teams Admin Center. So very, very excited about that one. And that one's rolling out at the end of this month, and then again, more and more operators will come on board. You now have the ability to create a task from team chats. So as part of the bar below your chat, one of the options will be to create a task. So you'll be able to do that. What that allows for is a more seamless flow of information and task creation, project management, if you will. While in a chat, you can kind of keep it all there. You don't have to jump out, create a planner, and then jump back in. You can create tasks right from the chat now. So if someone says, hey, Scott, why don't you set up a meeting for next week? Instead of me writing it down or having to do something with it, somebody can create a task for me right there. So this graphic just scrolling through on how that works. You see the card there. There it is. All right. Previous to this, your background was something you could upload yourself, and then there were the Teams ones that were canned. Org-wide backgrounds now allows your organization to control what backgrounds are available and be able to input backgrounds. So let's say there's a company logo that they're going to mandate you use as a background for all of your meetings. They could then force that and put that in for you, rather than mailing it out or emailing it out and everybody having to put it in themselves. So now we can do org-wide, organizational-wide backgrounds. Admins can install apps and meetings, so that's just what it says. IT admins will be able to select the Teams apps that can be installed in meetings for their organization. So you heard me say earlier, in Teams meetings, you can put things like forms or Poly or something like that into a meeting. Now the IT staff will be able to do that from the admin dashboard. So we have this thing called tags, and most people don't know what tags are, but now you have the ability to manage those tags. So you'll see there is an item here. Let me see right there. So you can see that where it says tags, okay, and down here are the different tags and who initiated the tag, or maybe also happen to type that tag. All right, you can see there are 3 members that are dealing with that tag and things like that. So it gives you a way to manage tags within a channel. That way you can see when people are mentioning these tags, they can be tracked. For live events, we now have a producer pop-out window, which I'm sure Kelly could tell you, as she is producing this particular live event, is very nice because it allows her to focus on the production of the live event versus having that embedded in her team where she sees things like new chats pop up and things like that. This can be a separate window. She could move this to a separate monitor if she wants. And that way she can minimize her team's client and not be distracted and pay more attention to the actual production of that live event. So we're real pleased. So similar to the pop-out meetings, we now have the pop-out producer view for live events. Roaming bandwidth control allows your IT administrators to set up bandwidth restrictions, things like no video or restricting video to a particular rate for sites that may not have the bandwidth that's needed. So if an organization has a small site somewhere and they have a limited amount of bandwidth, they will then have the ability to create a policy to restrict the amount of bandwidth. So another IT thing. And again, a lot of this stuff is just stuff that was in Skype for Business, and we're getting around to bringing it forward. So this is the ability to manage apps in GCC. Okay, so if we have any GCC folks in here, that's the government cloud. They can now manage apps. We've got a couple other GCC things here. Tags are now available in DoD. We just talked about tags, but now you can have them in the DoD space, the DoD cloud as well. They're also available now in GCC-High. So for those of you that understand what GCC is, you'll know what GCC-High is, and you'll have the ability to have tags there as well. So basically, we have tags rolled out across the board in all of the team's ecosystems. And then, of course, device management in GCC-High. So our devices have been certified now for GCC, and they can now be managed in that particular Office 365 instance. So they're very happy to see that as well, because it makes device management that much easier. Oh, and look at that. That rolls us right to the end, and I got just a couple of minutes to see if Kelly's got any questions for me.
Nope, no questions that came in. So you did a really good, thorough job. So thanks, Scott. Appreciate that. And we're honestly right on time. You're so good about time management on these. I feel like I'm always the offender that goes 10 minutes over on these things.
I honestly thought I was going to run long. I must have been speeding through this like nobody's business. So I hope it landed well without me going too fast. But you know what? It's going to be on demand. So if you missed something or wanted some clarification on something, you can go back and listen to it and then reach out to us and ask questions. So there's always that.
Yep, absolutely. Totally agree. We're always happy to answer questions. I also just posted out there as well. We would love to hear topics that you would like presented on in the upcoming Try This at Work events. We always want to hear from everyone in terms of what's top of mind for you. If it's top of mind for you, it's probably top of mind for someone else. So we would love if you would just take a second and, just shoot us a topic that you would like to see.
I think we should take a poll, Kelly, and see what they want to be named. Is it Try This at Workians, Try This at Workanites, or Minions? Personally, I don't
know if Minions is the right word for it.
Like Minions. But
Minions are cute, but I don't know if that's the right word.
Well, maybe we'll put out a poll prior to the next one, and we'll announce it at what we're going to call our followers. So that should be fun.
All right, so with that, thank you all so much for attending today. We don't have any upcoming events to promote to you quite yet, so just keep an eye on the TryThisat.Work site again, where you can access the lineup of any upcoming events and also all of the on-demand events. We will be promoting a new schedule here shortly. As you all know, anyone that is engaged with Microsoft, this is right at the very end of our year. It's quite the crunch time for us, so we promise we'll get a updated schedule out to you shortly. And we thank you so much for your time. Happy to answer any questions, and we all hope you have an amazing day and upcoming weekend.